Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about one of the most surprising truths in relationships. The less you care, the more he chases. Now, I'm not saying stop caring because you're bitter or trying to manipulate someone. I'm saying stop over-caring where it's not being reciprocated. There is a massive difference between love and self-abandonment. See, when you make someone the center of your world too quickly, you give away your power. You start chasing their validation, their attention, their approval, and in doing so, you forget who you are. But something incredible happens when you shift that focus back to you, when you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes, when you stop rearranging your life for someone who can't even text you back, when you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who's not even showing up. That's when the energy changes, because people can feel when your attention starts to drift. They can feel when you're no longer waiting, and suddenly they start showing up, not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing yourself. The moment you detach from needing someone, the entire dynamic of the relationship begins to shift. It's not magic, and it's not manipulation, it's energy. When you're emotionally invested in someone to the point where your mood depends on their responses, you give away your power. You might not even realize it, but your body language, your tone, your actions, they all begin to communicate one message: I need you more than you need me. And in most cases, the more someone feels needed in that way, the less they feel inspired to give. This is where many people fall into a painful cycle. You start off strong, confident, grounded, but the moment feelings deepen, you get anxious, you wait longer for texts, you worry when there's no reply. You replay conversations in your head. Slowly, your energy shifts from I am whole to I hope they choose me, and without meaning to, you slip into pursuit mode, not of love but of reassurance. Here's the shift: when you stop needing that reassurance, when you let go of the fear that they might walk away, you take your power back, and the moment you do, they feel it. They feel the absence of your emotional dependency. They sense that you are no longer waiting by the phone. You're no longer measuring your worth by how quickly they respond. You're no longer sitting on stand by giving them easy access to your time, attention, and affection regardless of how they show up. And that's when something fascinating happens. When people feel they've got you fully, when they feel there's no risk of losing you, effort tends to drop. It's not because they're cruel, it's human nature. We value what we perceive we could lose. We chase what we fear is slipping away. But when someone knows that your entire emotional world revolves around them, there's nothing left to earn. No mystery, no challenge, no respect-building tension. So when you detach, not in bitterness, not in silence games, but with calm confidence, you recenter yourself. You begin to operate from a place of want rather than need. You can enjoy their presence without clinging to it. You can love without losing yourself in that love. You no longer beg with your energy. Instead, your energy says, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, and I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to connect, but only if it's mutual. This kind of detachment is magnetic. It's not cold, it's secure. It's the kind of energy that invites people in, not because you're trying to pull them, but because you're not pushing. And in that calm confidence, they begin to feel the space. The absence of neediness creates curiosity. Your independence becomes attractive. Your peace becomes the thing they want to be part of, not because you demanded it, but because you modeled it. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about actually being okay if they go. That inner security, that willingness to walk away if you're not being valued, is what flips the dynamic. Suddenly, you're no longer the one holding on too tightly. You're the one who's centered. You're the one who can walk if it's not right, and in that moment, they often start doing what you did before, wondering, hoping, trying, not because you played a trick, but because you stopped giving your power away. Chasing someone for validation is one of the quickest ways to lose yourself in a relationship. It's an easy trap to fall into, especially when you deeply care about someone or when the connection feels intense. You start to interpret their attention as proof of your worth, and their withdrawal as a sign that you're not enough. But the truth is, seeking validation is not the same as experiencing love. Validation is temporary, fleeting. It soothes the surface but never heals the core. Love, on the other hand, is consistent, grounding, and mutual. It doesn't need to be earned through constant effort or emotional gymnastics. When you're in a space where someone else's attention determines how you feel about yourself, you become dependent on their reactions. You begin to perform rather than connect. You overthink your texts, your tone, your timing. You overanalyze silence. You try to say the right thing, do the right thing, be the version of yourself you think they'll like best. And in doing all of that, you drift further and further from authenticity. You're no longer building a relationship between two real people. You're building a performance, a strategy, a hope that if you're enough, they'll stay. But here's the problem. No amount of someone else's attention can fill the space inside you that you haven't claimed for yourself. That kind of validation is addictive. You get a hit of it when they text you, when they compliment you, when they show you affection, and then you crash the moment they pull away. It's a cycle of emotional highs and lows that keeps you hooked, but never secure. Real love doesn't put you on an emotional roller coaster. It doesn't leave you guessing your worth every time someone is distant. Love isn't proven by how much you're willing to bend, chase, or sacrifice. In fact, the more you try to earn someone's affection by proving yourself, the more they start to sense that you don't believe you're enough without it. And once that dynamic is set, it becomes very hard to undo. People can feel when you're seeking approval. They can feel when your self-esteem hinges on their behavior. And while it might get you attention in the short term, it rarely earns long-term respect. Because love that's based on performance isn't love, it's conditional attention. And that kind of attention disappears the moment you stop performing. What matters far more than being liked by someone is being true to yourself in the process. If someone doesn't see your value unless you're constantly proving it, then they're not looking closely enough, or they're not capable of loving you in the way you deserve. You weren't born to convince someone of your worth. You were born to connect, to share, to give from a full place, not a desperate one. When you let go of the need for validation, you shift everything. You no longer need to be chosen to feel whole. You no longer need to be told you're enough because you already know you are. And from that place of inner certainty, you stop chasing love and start attracting it. Because the most powerful energy in any relationship is self-assurance. It's the quiet confidence that says, I'd love for you to stay, but I'm already complete whether you do or not. Scarcity creates value. It's a principle that applies not just to economics, but to human behavior, especially in relationships. When something feels rare, it captures our attention. We automatically assume it must be important, desirable, or worth having. But when something is always available, always accessible, always there, no matter how valuable it may be, it's easy to overlook or even take for granted. This same principle shows up in how we give our time, our energy, and our presence to others. When you're constantly available for someone, always responding immediately, always saying yes, always putting them first, they may not consciously disrespect it, but they begin to devalue it. It's human nature. Predictability removes tension, over-accessibility removes curiosity, and without some level of healthy distance, appreciation starts to fade. That doesn't mean you need to play games or withhold affection to be valued. It simply means that your presence needs to be a choice, not an expectation. The most magnetic people are the ones who are warm, loving, and giving, but with discernment. They give, but they don't overgive. They show up, but they don't shrink themselves to fit into someone else's world. Their energy isn't on tap, it's earned. Imagine someone who drops everything every time you call, responds to every message within seconds, and is always adjusting their plans for you. At first it might feel flattering, but over time it stops feeling special. There's no anticipation, no space to miss them, no room to wonder what they are up to. On the flip side, think about someone who has a full life, a clear sense of self, their own goals, priorities, and boundaries. When they give you their time, it feels more meaningful because you know they had to make space for you. You know their attention isn't handed out freely to everyone. The truth is, when you are less emotionally available to someone who hasn't earned it, you naturally create a sense of scarcity. You're not always there, not because you're being manipulative, but because you have a full life, and that communicates value. You're not always easy to reach, not because you're punishing anyone, but because your attention is limited and you're selective about where it goes. That scarcity makes people lean in. It makes them think. It makes them evaluate your presence, and if they truly care, it makes them step up. Scarcity reminds others not to take you for granted. It shows them that your time is precious, that your emotional availability has limits, and that your world does not revolve around their whims. That message, when delivered with grace and not ego, is powerful. It subtly encourages reciprocity. It invites someone to match your effort rather than coast on your consistency. But scarcity doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean ghosting or withdrawing to manipulate attention. It means creating space, space to breathe, space to miss, space to feel curiosity, and that space naturally increases value not because you forced it, but because it reflects that you are someone with depth, boundaries, and self-respect. When someone knows they don't have to do anything to keep your attention, they may stop doing anything at all. But when they know your energy is a gift, not a guarantee, they start to treat it differently. They start to move with more intention. They start to notice what they had taken for granted. And in that awareness, real connection has a chance to grow, not from demand, but from genuine desire. Self-respect is one of the most magnetic qualities a person can have, especially in relationships. It's the invisible force that shapes how others see and treat you, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. When you have self-respect, you naturally create boundaries. You know what you're willing to accept and what you're not. You don't need to shout it or prove it. It shows in the way you carry yourself, the decisions you make, and the energy you allow into your life. In relationships, it's easy to confuse love with sacrifice. We're often taught that if you care deeply, you should go all in, give your time, your energy, your heart without hesitation. And while love does involve giving, it's not meant to be one-sided. When you care more about someone else's feelings than your own standards, you begin to compromise in ways that slowly chip away at your dignity. You let things slide. You justify inconsistent behavior. You silence your intuition because you don't want to come across as too much or too demanding, but in doing so, you also start to teach the other person that they don't have to rise to meet you. Self-respect flips that dynamic completely. It says, I can love you, but I won't lose myself in loving you. It means showing up fully, but only when it's mutual. It means not being afraid to walk away if you're not being treated with the care and consistency you deserve. And here's the thing, people can feel the difference. They can feel when you're acting from insecurity, craving their approval, or needing constant reassurance. That kind of energy doesn't pull people in, it often makes them pull away. But when you carry yourself with grounded confidence, when your actions reflect a belief that you are worthy of effort, consistency, and respect, others sense it, they are drawn to it, because self-respect doesn't come from arrogance or ego. It comes from knowing your value without needing someone else to validate it. It's quiet but undeniable. When you have self-respect, you don't chase. You communicate. You don't beg for attention. You choose where to give yours. You don't try to impress. You show up as you are and trust that the right person will appreciate that. And if they don't, you don't collapse, you don't spiral, you don't question your worth. You simply adjust your distance and keep moving forward with grace. One of the most attractive things about self-respect is that it creates emotional safety. It tells the other person, I won't tolerate disrespect, and I won't give it either. It creates clarity. It removes the confusion, the guessing games, the anxious overthinking. Because when you respect yourself, you set a tone for how the relationship will function. You establish a standard, and people either rise to meet it, or they remove themselves. Either way, you win. Either you build something healthy, or you create space for something better. Confidence is not built from being chosen. It's built from choosing yourself again and again, no matter who stays or who walks away. Self-respect reminds you that you don't need to lower your standards to be loved. You just need to be patient enough to be loved by someone who respects your standards too. And in that quiet strength, in that calm certainty, there's something undeniably attractive, something that doesn't chase love but invites it. Energy always follows attention. Wherever your focus goes, your emotional energy flows right behind it. In relationships, this is especially powerful. The more attention you give someone, thinking about them, worrying about what they're doing, wondering if they care, constantly checking your phone for a message, the more energy you're pouring into that connection. Even if they're not giving anything back, even if they're barely showing up, and often the person on the other side can feel that. They might not fully understand it, but they sense your availability, your eagerness, your emotional investment, and they respond accordingly. When someone feels your attention locked onto them, even in silence, they feel the emotional weight of it. And if that attention is coming from a place of insecurity, need, or fear of losing them, it often pushes them away rather than pulling them in. That's because people can sense when your focus is no longer on your own life. When you're living in reaction to them rather than living from your center, they start to feel more important in your world than they should be. Not because they've earned it, but because you've handed them that power, and that imbalance can shift the entire dynamic. But here's where everything changes, the moment you pull your attention back. When you stop checking their status, when you stop replaying conversations, when you stop making decisions based on what you think might make them stay, when you bring that attention back to yourself, to your growth, your peace, your joy, your purpose, you begin to reclaim your energy. And people notice that. They feel the absence of your emotional chasing. They feel the shift in your focus. And suddenly, the dynamic that once had them feeling in control becomes uncertain. They no longer feel that constant pull. That emotional dependency is gone, and with it, the sense of being pursued. This isn't about playing games. It's about recognizing that your attention is one of the most valuable things you can offer. And not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. Just like time, attention is a currency. Where you spend it determines what grows. If you spend it entirely on someone who isn't showing up for you, that connection grows lopsided. But if you reinvest that attention back into yourself, your passions, your health, your friendships, your goals, then you grow. And as you grow, your energy becomes more magnetic, more grounded, more whole. The irony is that when you stop pouring your energy into someone who's inconsistent, they often start wondering where it went. They notice the space, they notice your absence, and suddenly they feel a desire to re-engage, not because you demanded it, but because they no longer feel your energy wrapped around them. That space creates contrast. That contrast creates awareness. And that awareness can spark a shift, but the real transformation doesn't come from whether they chase you back. It comes from you realizing how much power you've been giving away and choosing to take it back. Because once you learn to protect your energy, you stop offering it to people who haven't shown they're ready for it. You become more selective, more intentional, and in that shift, you no longer feel powerless in love. You feel centered, you feel free, you're no longer chasing connection. You're becoming the kind of person who attracts it by how you live, not by how much you give. We teach people how to treat us not by what we say, but by what we allow, what we tolerate, and what we continue to engage with. Every time you accept behavior that falls short of your standards, you send a message, whether you mean to or not. You tell the other person, this is okay with me. And once that baseline is set, it becomes harder to shift later. That's why setting standards from the beginning isn't just about what you want from someone else, it's about the respect you hold for yourself. Often, people are afraid to set standards in relationships because they fear it will push the other person away. They worry that if they speak up, express their needs, or say no to something that feels off, they'll come across as difficult or high maintenance. But the truth is, the right person won't be scared off by your standards, they'll be drawn to them. Standards are not walls, they're filters. They help you separate the people who are genuinely interested in building something healthy from those who are only there for convenience. When you have no clear standards, relationships often default to what the other person is willing to give, rather than what you truly want or deserve. You end up adjusting your expectations downward, rationalizing behavior, and convincing yourself that this is just how they are. And the more you do that, the more you lose touch with your own sense of self-worth. You start to believe that asking for more is unreasonable, that wanting consistency is needy, that needing respect, effort, and clarity is asking too much. But it's not. Setting standards isn't about demanding perfection. It's about aligning with what makes you feel safe, valued, and respected. It's about saying, this is how I live, this is how I love, and this is how I expect to be loved in return. You don't have to be harsh about it. You don't have to issue ultimatums. You just have to live in a way that makes it clear you won't accept less than you give. That energy speaks louder than any lecture. When someone knows that you'll stick around no matter how they behave, they stop making the effort. Not necessarily because they're bad people, but because they've learned that the current level of effort is good enough for you. But when you calmly remove yourself from situations that don't meet your standard, when you no longer tolerate inconsistency, mixed signals, or emotional laziness, people notice, and if they care, they rise. If they don't, they fall away. Either way, you win, because either they meet you where you are or they make space for someone who will. It's also important to understand that setting a standard is not a one-time thing. It's a practice. Every day, in small and large ways, you reaffirm what you accept and what you won't. You do it by the boundaries you hold, by the way you communicate, and by the way you respond to behavior that doesn't align with your values. Over time, people learn how to engage with you, not through fear or control, but through clarity and consistency. Ultimately, your standards are not about controlling anyone else's behavior. They're about guiding your own. They help you stay aligned with who you are, even when emotions run deep. And the more consistent you are with those standards, the more naturally you attract people who respect them, not because you asked, but because you showed. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop over-investing in things you cannot control. In relationships, especially those that feel uncertain or unbalanced, we often believe that if we care more, do more, or hold on tighter, we'll somehow fix it. But the truth is, no amount of overthinking, overanalyzing, or overextending yourself can make someone show up the way you need them to.